Are the 2025 Florida Gators at risk of their own 2-10 record?
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free reviews in the podcast and on YouTube. Happy Tuesday. I'm Brandon Olsen. Find all my written work about the Florida Gators with swampsignal.substack.com. Today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. And the Florida Gators are coming out of their bye week with a 1-3 record, 0-2 in out-of-conference games against FBS opponents because your only win is against an FCS team, 0-1 in the SEC. You've got one out-of-conference FBS game remaining, and one out-of-conference game regardless, with Florida State coming up, which coincidentally we're talking about 2-10, right? And the possibility of 2-10 there. And for Florida, I'll be honest, they're going to make me seem like an ass. I don't think that that's going to happen. Can happen, but I don't think it will happen. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But Florida right now, you don't have an easy schedule, right? You've got 8 games remaining. 7 of them are against SEC teams, which the SEC honestly looks stronger than they've seemed in a while. Like even the bottom teams of the SEC are giving the top teams a fight, and the bottom teams, or the teams that are thought of as the bottom teams in the SEC, are beating ranked teams in other conferences. Mississippi State, Jeff Levy hasn't won an SEC game in his career yet as a head coach. He hasn't won an SEC game yet. Beat Arizona State earlier in the season. Took Tennessee down to the wire this past weekend. Like, these aren't easy wins at all. Florida does not have an easy schedule. In fact, Florida has a harder schedule than I think most people anticipated. Really, because I think a lot of fans went, okay, well, USF's not going to be great. They've been ranked or receiving votes. I think right now they're 26th in terms of receiving votes. A lot of people thought Florida State would be better than last year, but still not good. Beat Alabama, lost to Virginia, so we'll see. Miami going to take a step back. Not really. Their defense looks significantly improved. Their offensive line, still their offensive line. We'll see what they are long-term still. I think that's important to look at. People thought, hey, Mississippi State's still going to be Mississippi State. They're better. Georgia going to take a step back? Maybe. Sure, but still pretty good, right? Ole Miss might take a step back. They're number 4. Like, this isn't going to be an easy schedule at all. And Florida's trying to, I guess, strike gold twice, right? Last year, they had the awful start to the season, and they ended up turning things around and having, on paper, respectable season, right? I don't know if that's, I don't think that that's likely, right? Like, this sucks to say. But the Florida Gators, at this point, we just finished their Week 4 game. I just bit my tongue. We just finished their Week 4 game. Florida Gators are probably not going to become bowl eligible this year, right? And that sucks to say because it's Week 5 just finished. But right now, again, you're 1-3. You lost what was expected to be your second easiest game of the season. And you've got a freaking gauntlet coming up. Just the entirety of the season remaining, gauntlet. So I don't think that 2-10 is out of the realm of possibility. And I bring up the 2-10 specifically because the Florida Gators fan base and the Miami Hurricanes fan base gave Florida State more crap than anything else for Florida State going 2-10 last year. And so the optics, which I'll talk about in a second, but the optics of Florida then going 2-10 the very next year, awful. But also what I've talked about so frequently with Billy Napier is that the optics surrounding Florida have always been negative with Billy Napier at the helm. And that is also one of the reasons that I think there's a very strong case to depart with him, right? To part ways with him. Because the optics with Billy Napier at your head coach spot, you lost to Vanderbilt for the first time in a long time. Kentucky had a winning streak against you. You've lost to Tennessee a couple times. Not good. Coaches don't do that at the University of Florida. You lost to USF for the first time ever. You had the Jaden Rashada recruiting debacle. You had 41-17 at home. And so while 2-10 is, again, I don't think likely, but I refuse to say it's out of the realm of possibility, as I refuse to say anything negative is out of the realm of possibility. Yeah, it's unlikely. I do think that this is not going to be a team that gets to 6 wins at this point unless they turn around dramatically. But look, I get it. Like I just say this to say that I know that there's a ton of fans who still want to believe in the logo and still want to believe in this team, or not want to believe in the logo, but want to believe because of the logo. And you look at last year's turnaround and you go, okay, well, a lot of the guys on this roster right now were on this roster last year. And so they've done the turnaround thing before. They should be able to do it. What I brought up last year with the turnaround was I don't like it needing to take a turnaround. Like you've done the turnaround before, you know what works, so you should go into the season with what works. That just leads me to believe, or leads me to think, that maybe there's not going to be the turnaround this year, right? And again, like I said this yesterday, I'm not trying to be the doom and gloom guy. I'm just trying to be honest about things. But maybe the turnaround isn't happening this year. And I don't think that they'll go 1-11 or 2-10. But the rest of the schedule does not play out to be a turnaround schedule. There isn't a single time in this season where you go back-to-back games, at least, again, at the time of this episode, where we have the most recent top 25 rankings. There isn't a single time in the rest of this season where you go back-to-back games without facing a top 15 opponent. All right? The rest of your schedule is this weekend, number 9, Texas, then at number 6, Texas A&M. Then you get unranked Mississippi State, which, by the way, Mississippi State is currently, if you include the others receiving votes, 28th in the country. Then you have, so that's your not top 15 game. Then you've got number 12, Georgia. Then you have at Kentucky, who is unranked, so not top 15 game. But then you have number 4, Ole Miss. Then you have number 15, Tennessee. And then you end with a not top 15 team in Florida State. This is brutal. And look, some of those teams will sustain injuries, and some of those teams will have just gotten off to a hard start and will fall off. Regression to the mean is possible, right? Like, it's very possible that Texas A&M, which we'll talk about, maybe they drop off a bit, right? Maybe Florida State drops off. Maybe Tennessee drops off. You've also got the possibility that Georgia kicks it up again, that Mississippi State kicks it up more, that Kentucky kicks it up more. You've got the possibility there, but also I will say this, that Florida, if they're regressing to the mean, would be improving. And so maybe we'll see that, but the turnaround doesn't feel likely. Same thing with last year, where I was talking about prior to the turnaround, where I was like, all right, well, like it doesn't seem like you're going to win these games based on what we've seen. The turnaround is still possible, but based on what we've seen, they're not going to become bowl eligible. I also think that they're not going to be a 2-10 team, and we'll talk about those teams, or we'll talk about those games game by game. We'll talk a little bit about them when we get back with Locked On Gators. One of the tools that helps make a huge difference for business owners is Quo, formerly Open Phone. It's the same great business phone system you've heard me talk about before, just with a new name, and here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. When every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. Quo is the #1 business phone system that streamlines customer communication. It works right through an app on your phone or on your computer, so no more carrying 2 phones or relying on a landline. See why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly OpenPhone. Get started today and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedoncollege. That's quo.com/lockedoncollege. And if you've got existing numbers with another service, Quo will port them over at no extra charge. Quo, no missed call, no missed customers. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever the podcast and on YouTube. And like I said, I think there's a genuine, again, I think there's a possibility of Florida going 2-10 this year, which would absolutely suck. They might make me seem like an ass and go 1-11, which I doubt both those happen. I do think that this team will win more games. Here's the thing. This season's already, unless you win out, not going to happen, but unless you win out, this season's going to be looked at as a failure for me, right? I said this way before the season. I said that I believe this is a college football playoff roster, and that if you lose more than 4 games, this season's a failure. And that was with DJ Lagway not being fully healthy, which sure you can give him, but we're at this point where you got 1 loss to play around with. And I also said that if you do not reach the expectations that I have for this team, I will be calling for your job again. Okay? Simple as that. Texas is the game this weekend, right? They haven't looked as advertised offensively, right? Their only Power 4 game so far was against Ohio State, and they lost 14-7. I think that makes them tough to truly evaluate, though. Like, their defense looks incredible. Their defense has been wrecking. Their offense has been struggling. But again, they haven't been playing Power 4 teams. And I know I'm saying their offense has been struggling after they just put up 55, I think it was, against Sam Houston State, but that's Sam Houston State. It's not an SEC team. It's not a Power 4 team. It's Sam Houston State. So honestly, I think Texas is one of those teams where, because I think you can look at Florida and say, hey, okay, they played USF, which got ranked after the game. They played LSU and they played Miami. You've seen them play 3 teams that are FBS level, 2 that are top 10 ranked teams at the time. You kind of know that, hey, Florida is a team where even if they balance out and become a better team and become an average team across the FBS level, they're not hanging with the big dogs this year. Texas, I don't think you know anything about them, really. We know that, again, in week 1, it was 14-7 in a game that was very boring, didn't live up to the hype at all. And it wasn't one of those games where it's like, oh, both of these defenses are just playing lights freaking out. It was one of those games you look at the offense and you go, all right, even when there are options available against the defense, the offense isn't taking advantage of them. Going into the season, Arch Manning versus DJ Lagway was billed as like a WrestleMania main event, right? It was Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant. It was Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart. It was John Cena, Randy Orton. It was all that, right? And instead, it's nothing like that. Instead, we're getting just nothing even close to that. We're getting Val Venus versus Billy Gunn. Like that's what we're looking at with Arch Manning versus DJ Lagway for what it was billed as an intense battle between young superstars. And now that looks grim. However, that looking grim does make Florida's chances of winning this game at least better than if you're facing an offense that's clicking on all cylinders, right? Because the thing that Florida struggled with is scoring points. If you're facing a team that's also struggling scoring points, your defense can do their job. Your offense needs to do their job for once, just for once. Texas A&M is the next game at Texas A&M. And except for the Auburn game, Texas A&M has scored 40-plus points in every game this season. However, their defense has been what's been somewhat inconsistent for them. If they don't have their pass rush playing effectively, if they don't have their pass rush getting after the quarterback consistently, they haven't been that good on defense. That is what it is, and that's not surprising, right? Like they're a team that they're built to rush the quarterback. But if that isn't working, a lot of it doesn't work for them. And so we'll see what that is. I think Texas A&M is another one of those teams where it's like, all right, well, we'll see what they're going to be long-term this season. But again, except for the Auburn game, they've scored 40 plus in every game, but I think Florida has a better defense than Auburn. And so if Florida's defense can keep them in check, but again, I will say this, Auburn's offense has been more consistent and giving their defense better chances. And so if Florida's offense isn't going to do that, you're going to get destroyed. Again, because don't forget, last year, the Texas A&M game was the one where I said, all right, I'm done, fire Billy. It was the Texas A&M game because you lost, I think it was 33-20 to Marcel Reed, who was the backup prior to that game. And they didn't throw the ball basically the entire second half. Yeah, it was ugly. Then you have Mississippi State, which is homecoming for the Florida Gators, and they're not the same Mississippi State Bulldogs, right? Like Jeff Levy has the team fighting their asses off, honestly. They beat Arizona State in Starkville. They took Tennessee to overtime in Starkville. They're a team that this is going to be their second Power 4 road game yet, but they haven't, or this is going to be their second Power 4 road game, but they haven't played their first one yet. Okay, so we don't know what they're going to look like on the road, and I think a lot of people know that a Billy Napier home team looks pretty different than a Billy Napier road team. At least they have throughout his tenure at Florida so far. So we don't know what Mississippi State's going to look like there, right? They're going to be on the road. Also, an important note, Mississippi State will be coming off a bye week when they face Florida, whereas Florida will have played Texas, Texas A&M back-to-back, and then Mississippi State. So Mississippi State will be coming off a bye week. They'll be well-rested. They'll have 2 weeks to game plan and prep for it. Interesting to note. And again, look, Florida has historically performed well against that style of offense. However, they also performed well against USF style of offense. And while they did their job, again, I had someone in the comments yesterday, and oh yeah, like I blame the defense for the USF loss. Like, look, yeah, the defense had the really bad coverage bust where Dijon and Shreve Denton were looking to the sideline. They had the 2 really dumb penalties followed by a busted play on a screen. Outside of those 2 drives /4 plays, that defense played lights out. And again, you held USF to 16 points because again, 2-point safety. And I don't care, man. I think in any game, if you can hold your opponent to 16 points, you should win that game. That's just how I feel. I think that you should have an offense good enough to say, hey, in every game, we're going to score 17 or more, which, by the way, Florida hasn't done since beating Long Island 55-0. They haven't scored 17 points in a game yet. Important note, just a reminder. Georgia, you get coming off a bye week, and then you face, like, Florida has a bye, Georgia has a bye, and then you get into that game. I know they lost to Alabama. I know people are relatively down on Alabama. I think Kane Womack does a hell of a job as a DC there. Georgia, still incredibly athletic and talented. Passing game has been inconsistent. Part of that is that their offensive line has had their fair share of struggles. But this is also a defense that they held Bama shut down in the second half. They got off to a cold start, but they shut Bama down in the second half. And Bama's supposed to be a team that, or Bama's coaching staff is supposed to be a coaching staff that's known for their offense. And Georgia shut it down in the second half. They just didn't do enough to win the game. This is still a good Georgia team, right? And even if you think it's not, this is still a Georgia team and a Georgia coaching staff that's better than Florida's. Again, I usually go, oh yeah, rivalry game, throw everything out the window, which I'm still going to say with this game. But if we're just talking mano-a-mano, it doesn't shape up well for Florida. We're going to talk about the final 4 games in the schedule when we get back with Locked On Gators. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. If that's betting on Ashton Jeanty to get, I'll tell you this, I'll just peel back the curtain a little bit. I've bet Ashton Jeanty over carries every single game so far. And it's worked. As long as they're even relatively close, they're going to run the football. Just saying. Might be a move. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free reviews in the podcast and on YouTube. And to wrap up today's show, we are talking about the final 4 games in the Florida Gators schedule, which, of course, the last game we spoke about was Georgia, which means you're past your second bye. Now, as in you have your second bye, then Georgia, and then now you're in the final 4 games. You got Kentucky. They're Kentucky. Florida's a better team than them. You're going to be on the road. Kentucky always shows up for Kroger Field against Florida. But they're Kentucky. And I don't mean that in they're bad. I don't mean it in that way. I mean it as they're Kentucky. They're going to drag you down into an ugly, horrible football game. And they're going to make you beat them that way. I've said it before. Like I view Kentucky how I view the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is one of my favorite sayings, which is don't argue with an idiot because they'll drag you down to their level and then beat you with experience. I think Kentucky, the Steelers, they just drag you into these ugly football games, and they're going to beat you in those ugly football games because that's what they do. Simple as that. Kentucky 2-0 this season against group of 5 opponents. Or non-Power 4 opponents, and Kentucky 0-2 against SEC opponents. Who knows what they are, because Florida's not playing like an upper-tier SEC opponent, right? Florida's not playing great at all. We'll see what Florida looks like and what Florida plays like by that point in the season. But Kentucky's going to try to make this game ugly. They're always going to do that. You got to answer the call. That's it. You have at Ole Miss. And look, that's later in the season, right? So I can say like this team's humming right now. They're doing really well. I was formerly, we're going to have this conversation for 1 second. People always go, oh, Lane Kiffin should replace Billy Napier at Florida. I don't care to have the conversation about that possibility. I will say this. I used to be way out on Lane Kiffin ever coming to Florida. He takes coaching more seriously now. I would be more interested if that opened up. That's all I'm saying. I'm not talking about a list or anything like that. I'm just saying Lane Kiffin is taking coaching more serious. And you can tell. The hiring of Pete Golding to me was huge. I think that the offense hasn't been as dominant as it's been in the past. But, first off, Trinidad's playing some damn good football at quarterback. But the offense has also been more complementary with the defense. And we hear Billy Napier say complimentary football a billion times, but they don't play it at all. Florida doesn't play complimentary football. That's a lie. That's it. That's a lie. Complimentary football isn't, oh yeah, we're going to have a really good defense and a god-awful offense. It's not complimentary. Ole Miss is playing complimentary football. They're playing really good defense, and they're playing pretty good offense, not explosive, not as explosive as it used to be, not as good as it used to be, but guess what? They're still moving the ball. They're still having time of possession. They're still getting first downs and killing clock and giving their defense a chance. That's complimentary football. Then you have Tennessee, which Tennessee's really interesting because when Nico Iamaleava left and Joey Aguilar came in, I didn't think they were going to be that successful, especially early on, not because of Joey Aguilar being bad, but because of that offensive system with a new starting quarterback. Takes time, usually, that offense. Takes timing. Joey Aguilar is playing winning football right now. I don't think he's playing amazing football. I'll say that. Like I know there's people that are like, oh yeah, Joey Aguilar should be in the Heisman conversation. I don't think that's true at all. But I think he's playing winning football. Maybe most importantly, he's avoiding sacks. He's getting pressured still. He's just avoiding sacks. I will also say the receivers for Tennessee are drop prone, which is not surprising. I think a lot of people going into the season were like, all right, yeah, their receivers are skeptical. Then they beat the crap out of Syracuse, and people went, oh, well, they might just be that. And now it turns out Syracuse sucks. We'll see what Tennessee is going to be long-term. I mean, they took Georgia to the wire. That was an insane game with Georgia. And they win if Josh Heupel coaches better, by the way. He coached to not lose that game, and that's how you lose games. Billy. Defense for Tennessee it's not elite like it was last year, but they're still pretty good. Thing is, versus Power 4 opponents so far, they're giving up on average 35 points per game, but they're scoring over 40. And so we'll see what they're looking like later in the season. We'll see what Florida's looking like later in the season, but that's how Tennessee's playing right now. It's like they're like, yeah, you're putting up points, we're just putting up more. And it's working for them, right? They're winning football games. So we'll see, but I don't know if they're still a college football playoff team. I really don't. But they're winning football games. All you can ask for them if you're a Tennessee fan, right? Then the last game's Florida State. We still don't know what they are. I still can't say I know what Florida State is, because they beat Alabama in a drubbing, but that also was I'm not saying this to take anything away from Florida State's victory, because I think they beat the crap out of Alabama, but that game with the weather and everything, like, it was better suited for Florida State's style of play. But again, I don't care. That's football. Like I said I was on the, I do every post game for the New York Giants. I do the Lockdown Giants squad show. And after the Giants beat the Chargers on Sunday, we were talking about, oh yeah, like, well, this was the Chargers coming to the East Coast means that they were playing at basically 10 a.m. their time. And that's unfortunate, right? Like, because, it's morning for them. They're not acclimated yet. I don't give a damn. That's football. You play in the conditions. It's the same thing as going, oh yeah, this team from the South went up to play, I don't know, Ohio State or Penn State in late November. I don't care. It's football. Go out there and play it. Being built for conditions is part of being built to win. So I don't care about that. I'm just saying that game was built for Florida State to be not favored, but the conditions were better suited for Florida State. But they also lost to Virginia, and then they played two nobodies in between that. I will say this, the passing offense for Florida State hasn't shown up versus Power 4 opponents. Hasn't. Thomas Castellanos is averaging like 180 passing yards versus Power 4 opponents. He has 1 touchdown and 3 picks in those games as well. Haven't seen it, but again, that's only 2 games. Like, I think that for a lot of teams, if you've only played 1 or 2 Power 4 opponents, it's really tough to say that we really know what you are at this point. Or if you've played 1 or 2 Power 4 opponents, an FCS, and a really bad G5 team, I think it's tough to say what you are. If you've played a good G5 team, then all right, you probably have a better example. But I don't know. I really don't. That's just, it's tough. I don't think that Florida goes 2-10 this year. I also don't think they make a bowl game, which also pisses me off, to be quite frank with it. But that's out of my control. I'm an analyst. I watch, I analyze, I give my opinion. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever in the podcast and on YouTube. We will be back tomorrow with Hayden Hansen, Florida Gators starting tight end, and he will be talking about the bye week, this upcoming game against Texas, which is important for him as well. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my Florida Gators written work with swampsignal.substack.com, and I'll see you all next time.